There is a place on this planet, larger than every continent combined. A place that covers more of the Earth's surface than all the forests, deserts, and mountain ranges put together. And yet, we have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of it. This is not a jungle, not a glacier, not some remote island chain. It's the bottom of our own ocean. And after a century of submarines, satellites, and deep-sea robots, more than 80% of it remains completely unseen by human eyes. We like to think of exploration as finished. Every mountain has a flag on it. Every desert has a road through it. Every jungle has a GPS coordinate. But drop below 6,000 meters, and the maps simply stop. Not because we've seen what's down there and decided it's empty, because we have never looked. Here's the strange part. We've had the technology to map the ocean floor in detail since the 1960s. We chose not to use it. Mapping the seafloor at the same resolution we use for Mars or the Moon would take ships sailing back and forth for centuries. So instead, we used satellites to guess. Gravity readings, sea surface bumps caused by underwater mountains tugging at the water above them. It works, sort of. It gives us a blurry sketch. But a sketch is not a photograph, and a photograph is not a visit. As of right now, less than a quarter of the seafloor has been mapped at a resolution good enough to spot a shipwreck, let alone a creature. The rest is guesswork stitched together from satellites that have never touched the water at all. So, what does exploring the deep ocean actually require? Not photographs, not sonar pings. A vehicle, a human or a machine built to survive forces that would crush a city bus like a soda can. At 1,000 meters, the pressure is already 100 times what we feel at the surface. At 6,000 meters, it's 600 times. Past 10,000 meters, you are no longer in a hostile environment by human standards. You are somewhere our biology was never meant to register as a place at all. There is exactly one region on Earth where this pressure reaches its absolute maximum. The Mariana Trench in the Western Pacific. Its deepest point, the Challenger Deep, drops to nearly 11,000 meters. If you took Mount Everest and dropped it into that trench, the peak would still sit more than a mile underwater. Only a handful of crewed vehicles in human history have ever reached the bottom. 3 total. Compare that to the Moon, where 12 different astronauts have walked across the surface. We have sent more people to die on the battlefield of low Earth orbit than we have sent to the deepest point on our own planet. And here's what makes that strange rather than just impressive. The Mariana Trench is famous specifically because it's the deepest. But fame is not the same as understanding. Being the most extreme point on the seafloor doesn't mean it's the most studied. In some ways, it means the opposite. The deepest trench on Earth has had more submarine visits than the next 10 deepest trenches combined, which means almost everywhere else down there, in places only slightly less extreme, we have effectively never gone at all. The Tonga Trench, the Kermadec Trench, the Diamantina Fracture Zone off the coast of Australia, nearly 8,000 meters down and almost entirely unvisited. These aren't obscure footnotes. They are entire ecosystems, each one likely as alien and unique as the Mariana, and most of them have never had a single camera lowered into them. Every time a research vessel does manage to drop equipment into one of these trenches, the result is close to the same. Something unexpected. In 2014, an expedition into the Kermadec Trench recorded amphipods, shrimp-like scavengers, in numbers so dense they blanketed the seafloor like a carpet. Nobody had predicted a population that large could survive that far down in water that cold on that little food. In the Mariana Trench itself, cameras have caught creatures with no visible eyes, no pigment, bodies built from gelatin instead of muscle, thriving at depths that should make survival, by every textbook definition, impossible. And these are the trenches we have actually visited. The ones we haven't are a different category of mystery entirely. Not, we don't fully understand this place. More like, we don't know what we don't know. So, why haven't we gone further? It isn't a lack of curiosity, it's cost and it's risk in a combination that makes almost every other form of exploration look cheap by comparison. A single crewed dive to the bottom of the Mariana Trench can cost tens of millions of dollars. The vehicle has to be built from materials that won't compress, won't crack, won't implode under forces equivalent to having 10 elephants standing on a postage stamp. And if something goes wrong at that depth, there is no rescue. There is no surfacing in time. There is only the certainty that the ocean will win. In 2017, an unmanned submersible exploring the Mariana Trench was lost mid-dive. No distress signal, no warning. It simply stopped transmitting and was never recovered. Whatever happened to it happened in less than a second, in total darkness, at a depth where light has never once reached in the history of the planet. This is why most of what we know about the deepest ocean doesn't come from humans going down there at all. It comes from machines we send, and hope to get back. Remote-operated vehicles tethered to ships by cables that have to withstand both the pressure and the cold. Autonomous landers that drop, record, and rise again, sometimes taking days just to make the round trip. Every single mission is a gamble against a place that does not care whether we succeed. And yet, somehow, life down there doesn't seem to be gambling at all. It seems completely at home. Hydrothermal vents, cracks in the Earth's crust, spewing water hot enough to melt lead, sit at the bottom of some of these trenches, surrounded by entire colonies of life that has never seen sunlight and never needs to. Microbes there don't photosynthesize. They eat chemicals straight out of the planet's interior: hydrogen sulfide, methane, dissolved metals, and from those microbes, an entire food web builds upward. Worms, crabs, clams the size of dinner plates. A complete ecosystem running on geology instead of sunlight, thriving in a place we once assumed could only support nothing. If an ecosystem like that can exist here, on Earth, in conditions this extreme, it raises a question that reaches far beyond our own ocean. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, is believed to hide a liquid ocean beneath miles of ice, kept warm not by sunlight, but by the same kind of internal heat that powers our hydrothermal vents. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, shoots geysers of water into space, evidence of a similar hidden sea. If life can take hold in our own deepest trenches without a single ray of sunlight, the deep ocean stops being just a research subject. It becomes a rehearsal for what we might eventually find somewhere else entirely, which is why the unexplored trenches matter more than their size or their depth records suggest. Everyone we haven't visited is also a place we haven't ruled in or ruled out as evidence for how life might survive somewhere far stranger than Earth. There's another reason the silence down there should worry us a little. In 2019, researchers pulled plastic fibers out of the digestive systems of amphipods living at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest, most isolated point on the entire planet. 11 kilometers down, completely cut off from human civilization by every measure we use to define isolation. And human waste had still found its way there first. We hadn't explored the trench, but somehow our trash had. So the last unexplored place on Earth is not empty, and it is not untouched. It's simply unseen. Life is already down there, doing things we haven't documented, adapting to pressures we can barely model, possibly holding answers to questions we haven't even learned to ask yet. And our own influence has already arrived ahead of our curiosity. Every other frontier humans have chased, mountains, poles, even space, eventually gave us a clear finish line. A summit, a pole, a landing site with a flag in it. The deep ocean doesn't offer that kind of ending. There is no single point you can reach and call it explored, because the trench you've mapped tells you almost nothing about the one next to it. Each one is its own sealed world, shaped by its own chemistry, its own pressure, its own history written into rock that hasn't seen daylight in millions of years. We have been to the deepest point that exists 3 times by 3 different vehicles separated by decades, and in that same span of time, we put 12 human footprints on the moon, sent rovers across the surface of Mars, and photographed the edges of our solar system. The ocean floor, stretching beneath every coastline on the planet we call home, remains the one place we have almost entirely refused or failed to go. Maybe that's because some part of us doesn't want to know what's there. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just hard, expensive, and dark, and difficulty alone was enough to keep us out for 200 years. Either way, the last place on Earth humans haven't explored isn't hiding from us. It's just down there, waiting in the kind of silence that hasn't been broken since the planet was formed. And every time we finally do send something down to look, it sends something back we didn't expect. We just haven't gone back often enough to find out what else is waiting.